Hello everybody, it's Armchair. I meant to get this out a lot earlier than I am now, but life things just kind of got in the way. But good life things, luckily, which you all will be in the loop when it's finally time to address that. But first, I mentioned that we were going to talk about Autism Part 2. This is episode 2 of talking about my life and my experiences with autism. So we'll go ahead and start where we left off, which is where I didn't go to school one day because I was very, very upset one day. Just with relentless bullying and stuff, because a lot of people, they knew who I was, they knew the condition that I had. So, of course, I was very easy to exploit in that regard. So my mom and I, just on, I don't remember what day it was specifically, but I believe it was early on in January where we were kind of talking about it. We decided to put off all school time to make sure that, one, I was okay, and two, to let myself learn about this part of myself that I never really dove into as a kid. And why would I? I mean, what would I constitute as normal when I have so little life experience to go off of? You know what I mean? So I learned what autism was, and I kind of learned what that meant to me specifically. And I learned about some notable figures such as Temple Grandin. We actually watched the movie. We also had a family friend who, I can't remember what their names were, which I wouldn't name drop them anyway, but one of their sons had autism, and he was pretty successful in life, and that's one of the reasons as to why my mom thought it would be a good idea for me to talk to him, since he went pretty far in life, which I also have the same potential of going pretty far in life. I think I'm on a pretty good track so far. I am licensed by the FAA to fly drones commercially, so that's gotta speak for something, right? But we were talking about these kinds of things, what autism was, what this person's experience was, and how he kind of coped with that reality. Not in the sense that he was coping in like a negative way, but in this way that he was learning this thing about himself, which was the very same thing that I kind of had to do, since I knew nothing about it. And shortly after I met with this person, I also watched the Temple Grandin movie, as well as I got her book as well. Now I know that there's some potential things that surround Temple Grandin that people are kind of like, about, although I wouldn't know what those are. If you want to give me a refresher, you definitely tell me in the comments, because I would know absolutely nothing about it off the top of my head. But regardless, I thought it was a really, really cool story. And just seeing the visual thought process of someone that had the same condition as myself, how they were able to figure out different ways to keep cows calm as they were going through, I think it was a slaughterhouse place or something. How they were able to just do a bunch of different things, find lots of different solutions, just from different ways that they think compared to other stereotypical people. Not for nothing, but it also goes over some of the things that she kind of had to do for herself. Not just to make an impression on the career space, but to actually take care of herself in situations where she felt overstimulated, like making the squeezing machine, which is very similar to what cows kind of had. Whether that's a creative liberty, I'm not sure. That may or may not have happened, but, you know, it's in the movie, so, yeah. So Temple Grandin and plenty of other people with autism can have this enhanced sense of just being able to learn from just looking at things, being able to visually learn in ways that other people might not be able to. Although it's not limited to just visual learning, and I don't think for me it is purely visual learning, because there were a lot of things that I was really auditorially good at. I was really good at taking information in from things that I'd listened to. I was able to memorize lots of different things. Something that I would have mentioned in the previous video is that when I was a kid, I used to script a lot. I would script full-on movies, along with, off the top of my head, I don't really have any movies memorized, but at the moment I could script about, I don't know if you've heard of Brian Regan, but he was the first stand-up comic that I had listened to because a classmate decided, hey, let's listen to Brian Regan in class. So that was just a really fun thing to listen to, and I became just very... I loved the routine that he did. Well, not routine, but the live shows that he did, and I was able to script those word for word, along with getting the timing right with the laughing cues and stuff. It's really fascinating what I was able to take in. Also, for auditory stuff, music, I was able to take music that I listened to and be able to replicate what I heard on the violin without sheet music. So I'd be able to just figure out who was playing what violin parts were where, and I'd just be able to play that on my own, just by ear. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's it's super cool that I was able to do that. If I played frequently, I'd probably still be able to play a few of those things. I'd never had the sheet music for, off the top of my head, Johann Strauss II's, what is it? Emperor Waltz? Emperor Waltz is one of his pieces that he made that I listened to very, very frequently. And that was something I could just play by memory. It does help that Emperor's Waltz is very simple to learn how to play on the violin. It's not too complicated, but my point still stands. And there are some things that I remember visually. I consider myself to be not the best visual learner, but I could definitely take some details in. And, that would just depend on what it is that I'm talking about. Whether it's looking at a book, taking in facts from a book or something, or, hell, whether I'm plane spotting or something and I'm trying to take in the details of what I'm looking at to be able to identify what it was. I would just know what to look for, what big and small details to look out for, and I'd just be like, oh yeah, of course, it's this. And as I mentioned, it's not going to be like that for every single thing. And there's some weaknesses there, but for the most part, especially if we talk about something like plane spotting, where I'm looking at different details to try to set something apart, like people would get 737s mixed up, like the 737 versus the 737 MAX. There's some differences there. I know what key things to look out for, like how the winglets look, or how the back end looks, the way that the engines look, different things like that would, some other people, like my partner, would not give a second thought. But I could take in and I could really figure that out, not even taking me 2 seconds to figure out the difference, and be like, yeah, it's this. I call it visual muscle memory. And for muscle memory, actual muscle memory, there's something that I talked about a lot with my family and friends, because apparently they've never heard of this term until I learned about it through a homeschooling class that I took, a writing class I believe it was, and that was specifically kinesthetic learning, where you learn to do things with your hands. I guess that can go into the violin playing bit, but there's a lot of things where it's equally applicable, I guess. I've made lots of paper airplanes and stuff, and I've designed plenty of paper airplanes too. I've kind of brought that up in a previous video. But there are designs that I will have made 10 years ago. I will have no visual reference, as in like a book or anything that I've written or notes to say, you need to fold it here, and then you need to fold it here, and then you need to fold it over using X and Y reference points to get it to be the shape that you want it to be. Like, there's just a very, very deep muscle memory in the recesses of my mind that's ever present whenever I'm doing something, especially if that's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. Something else that kind of fits in that context is with my RC fleet. I have like 10 RC planes, and now I have a DJI drone, so yeah. But anyways, at some point I hadn't flown RC in like 6 years, and I just had no way of being able to fly any kind of RC plane, whether it was someone else or one that I had myself. And I had absolutely no exposure to any of that stuff. Up until Christmas 2020 or 2021, where I got an RC plane just for Christmas, for and giggles. It was like a UMX, no, it was a Hobby Zone little mini cub. And again, I hadn't flown RC in years up to that point, and it just felt like muscle memory, where it didn't matter how long it had been since I had last done it. It was just second nature to me, and I could fly with full confidence knowing that I would not make a mistake, and I didn't. But it's really cool just seeing how deep that connection goes with things that I like doing, regardless of whether it's something I can do well kinesthetically, something I can pull, like information I can pull from something in a purely visual sense, or from an auditorial sense. Being able to just learn how I work, and being able to share that with people that I'm the closest to in life, it's really cool just being able to help people understand how I work, and just helping myself understand how I work myself. I've had a long life worth of just moments where there were these bits of self-discovery with the things that I did and just the way that I worked. Being able to just learn all these things about myself is just truly fascinating. I would have it no other way. Now, would I be relatively slow to gather information and react to some things? Yeah, probably. But that's just the way that I process information. If it's a little bit slower, then so be it. It at least gives me a little bit of time to be able to figure out what it truly is that I'm looking at, or something that I'm thinking about. I consider myself less slow, like as a way to look down at such a thing, and recontextualize it into me being a bit more, what's the word? Methodical, I guess, is a good way to put it. I'm very methodical with my thought process. I have gone to speech therapy for years and years, up until the end of high school, which is about the time that I thought, I think I could speak English pretty well. I know how to communicate with people. I can hold my own in a conversation. But now it was just a matter of me being able to learn how to keep up the pace with things that I was thinking about, and just being able to manage where my mind goes, you know. And I'm super glad that I had been given such a safe space to be able to just figure myself out. Like I told my mom, I said I was really glad that I wasn't born normal. And by that I mean neurotypical, because then I just wouldn't have this perspective. Especially this perspective that I can share with all of you, which you will be hearing a little bit more of, because I have some more thoughts, and maybe I'll get my partner to kind of tell their story about things that they noticed about me and things that they've noticed about themselves too. So, hope you found that interesting. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys again very soon.